And so we had a great plan with Joanna, our first. But I think as Muhammad Ali said, all great plans work well until you get hit in the mouth. So when everything went down with Joanna, which was preeclampsia and some other complications, everything just kind of hit the fan and it got really disorganized really, really quickly. And so we felt like having a doula would be better able to keep us on track and keep us on a path that would be more in line with what we value, which is medical independence.
It was so much better. Like, I always say that was my favorite birth. It was like the dream birth. And if I could do that birth every time, I would probably have 20 kids.
But this is all based in evidence. The whole idea of having a doula, all these things are based in evidence.
Welcome to the Keeping Your Power Real Talk on Resilience podcast. I'm your host, Traci Doula. I'm a family and birth advocate, a mentor, and your personal encourager. I wanted to create the space for individuals, families, and professionals who are done with just surviving and want to rise. Because when everything feels like it's falling apart, the one thing the world can't take from you is your power. And that's where resilience begins. It's not just riding the waves or surviving the storms. It's about how to overcome the challenges. So whether you're in the thick of it or reflecting on where you've been, pull up a chair and let's navigate the hard conversations and the beautiful stories that together we can be honest and use empathy and have a desire to grow, all while, of course, keeping your power in the process. On today's episode, we sit down with India and Dallas, a couple who embody true endurance. After encountering multiple miscarriages, a traumatic hospital birth, and a midwifery experience that unfortunately fell short, India dug into her intuition, found a doula, and chose to have a home birth during the height of COVID, where she and her husband finally felt empowered. But life didn't stop testing them. Their next pregnancy brought illness, medical pushback, and the need to fight for survival once again. This is a raw and real conversation about perseverance, advocacy, and keeping power in the face of a broken system. If you've ever felt unheard, this one's for you. Join us as we talk to India and Dallas and how they kept their power in the process. Hey, welcome, India and Dallas. I'm so glad that we're here, and I'm so excited to see y'all. I feel like it's been forever that we sat down. But I just want to start by saying that, y'all are some of my favorite clients and favorite people. I feel like we have been through some journeys that we are just now friends. And that's not something I can say, for everyone. And I feel like that is just like really special to me. We met, or the very first time that I met y'all was when you were pregnant with Hazel, and she's your third, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your family dynamics, your kids, and let's kind of start out with like that relationship when we first met.
We have 5 kids. Joanna is our oldest, and she is about to be 11. Then we have Graham, and he is 9. And then Hazel, she's 6. Then after that, we have Gideon. He is 4. And then Lily, and she is going to be 2 in November. But we met with Hazel, but I knew about you before that because my sister Heather needed a doula, and I had done my research, and I was like, you need to go call Traci. Like, this is the woman you need to talk to. And so Heather used you, and so then after that, it was my turn with Hazel.
So you were already researching. So you let your sister like try me out before you called. So that was very nice.
I guess.
So
I think I was just ready at that point.
We were just in between kids at that point. So
Yeah.
Well, tell me what you were researching in order, to find a doula or to find the education that you needed.
Well, we'd had a few incidences in the hospital that we just weren't fans over, and we wanted it to go different. And so I just started looking into how can I make this better for me, because I want to have more children, and I just didn't want the same things to happen. And so everybody kept saying you need a doula. And so that's where I started.
We started with India as a preparer and a planner. And so we had a great plan with Joanna, our first. We had a great plan, but all great plans, I think as Muhammad Ali said, all great plans work well until you get hit in the mouth. So when everything went down with Joanna, which was preeclampsia and some other complications, everything just kind of hit the fan and it got really disorganized really, really quickly. And so we felt like having a doula would be better able to keep us on track and keep us on a path that would be more in line with what we value, which is medical independence, right?
So disorganized meaning like what? What did you feel like you didn't get with Joanna that you feel like a doula could have helped with?
We had a big, beautiful birth plan, right? But when all this stuff goes down and you're in the moment, your OB sometimes is not going to follow that unless you're writing that birth plan and you're like, hey, and then sometimes they don't communicate with you. And we just felt like having a doula would help us in that area.
And some things they don't talk about, like you talk about beforehand, like we didn't want an episiotomy, and they just didn't tell us that they did it.
Yeah.
They're like, well, you're so little, you needed one, and those kinds of things. Just we needed somebody there to help us figure out how to navigate those things. And we went midwife next. So we went there, and then we decided, well, maybe we just need a midwife instead of an OB. So our next one was a midwife, and that didn't even go in the hospital. That didn't even go quite like we wanted it. So then we're like, well, we need somebody on our team.
Well, each step got progressively better.
Oh,
and then especially after Traci got involved, each step got progressively better. But
so y'all were the perfect example of people who said, hey, this is kind of what my experience was with my first. Everybody's saying that I might have a better chance of getting what I feel like I needed, especially with being in the decision-making process with a midwife. And then that didn't even go exactly the way that you thought it was going to go. Can you give me an example of what you thought was going to happen with your midwifery care that you didn't necessarily get in that care?
They were very much under the hospital policies and trying to work within the hospital policies. I felt like they would be more on our side and would help us navigate things that we wanted that may not have been hospital policy, but they weren't. It was like they were stuck, trapped. And so we just didn't feel like we still at that point had somebody on our side.
Yeah, that's a big misconception that I see a lot of people fall into that trap of, because we're just educating that midwives are the answer, or midwives are going to get better care. And sometimes that is true. But if you have a CNM that works inside a hospital, and it depends on the state, but in the state that we're in, they have to be overseen or collaborate with physicians. And sometimes that does make it very difficult for them to do the independent care. So you were the perfect example of that. So did you experience the same kind of medical conditions like the preeclampsia with Gideon?
Graham is our second at the hospital, but no, we didn't. We just had a really long labor. Those first two, they were really long in the hospital, and our midwife was clocking out. Her time was done, and so she left us with the OB who was on staff, and he didn't like how long I was in labor, and he told me, I knew Graham was sunny side up, and he said, no, he's not. You need to get an epidural right now, or I'm pulling this baby via C-section. And it was very much, this is how it's going to be. And I was like, well, I don't want a C-section. He said, well, then you need to get an epidural because you're tired and that's why he's not coming out. Well, I got the epidural the last minute. Like, we were at the pushing stage. And he comes out and he is sure enough OB. I mean, yeah. OP. Is that how you said that?
OP.
And so he was the way I thought he was. And that's why it took so long. And anyway, so we didn't get listened to, and we just kind of get ramrodded, I guess. I don't know.
And so in position of OP is meaning that the back of the baby's head's coming down the backbone, which takes an awful long time sometimes. Yes. And, sometimes that's just not recognized in the medical model of care. And, you feel like you're on that time limit and all of those things. And so you had started doing your research. What were you looking for? You just wanted something different, or did you even know?
It seemed like every pregnancy that we had, each one got successfully better, like I said. But every time we were treated like pregnancy is a disease or a sickness rather than a normal bodily function. And so we're like, this is not the answer. We can't be treated like we have a sickness or some incurable problem that's got to be fixed. There's got to be a better way to handle it. And I think that's where India started looking into it. She's like, I'm not sick. Yes, I have morning sickness. Yes, I'm carrying another human being, but this is not out of the ordinary. This is not some strange thing that should be treated as if I am carrying the world's most deadly disease.
Yeah.
Because India, you had some miscarriages through all of these, some losses too. So can you explain kind of where those came into play with, some of your anxiety in these situations?
Yeah, we lost our first two, and they're pretty early. We usually miscarry around the 8-week mark. I haven't had any past 9 weeks. And that's always been a concern for me. And I frequently have them. We have some in the beginning, and then we had Joanna. And I didn't have any between Joanna and Graham, but I had 3 between Graham and Hazel, and then 1 between Gideon and Lily. So they never knew. I did some testing and stuff. We've never really figured out why. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of anxiety there with me. And I was actually working with a midwife for a little while at the time with that. And we weren't really getting listened about that either. And so I never felt like I got the care heard. Yeah. And it wasn't until I recently found a new midwife that I've been using for the last, since Lily's birth, I guess, after her birth, that I feel like we're finally being heard and listened to, and things are being figured out. So
great. I love that. I love that. So just perseverance, and I don't know what I need, but I just know that I need to keep searching and finding it, and that's where the resilience comes in. And those are just hard steps. So you hired me with your third, and how was that birth different than the first two?
Oh, drastically. Listen, I was so calm. I didn't even know I was in labor, really, like further along. Like it was more peaceful. I was more confident. We were given so much information about what we could and say and what we needed and what was hospital policy versus, what we could and couldn't do. But I don't know, it just gave us so much information, like the classes that we took. It gave us more reasons behind why we wanted to do what we wanted to do. We were prepared. We had the information, the right information to present somebody and be like, this is why we're doing this. And this is, anyway, so that gave us, we were ready at that point.
I feel like so many couples know their belief system. Like y'all knew that you didn't fit with OB care, and then you were like, well, everybody's telling me I might have better care with a midwife. And I feel like, maybe that y'all did love that idea of the midwifery model of care, but then that didn't go real well. So you kind of put me in the mix, and you still saw a midwife, you still chose to go to the hospital and do that with the doula on the team, which made for, it kind of opened up the team in that, I just provided more information on your rights, your voice, where you could speak up. And I think it was Dallas that was like, I didn't even know. I knew that I could, but I didn't know where I had a voice or when. And how. So Dallas, tell me like what enlightenment during that time, that we were preparing for Hazel's birth, that you kind of had some light bulb moments?
I can't pinpoint like an exact moment, but I just felt like, Traci, you prepared us better. I'm not blaming my parents or anything, but I was not prepared for what childbirth involved. Personally, I have been of the men sit outside and smoke cigars and come in and get the baby when it's done, but that's not, as we've talked about, that's not being on the team. That's not coaching. That's not working together, and we're in this together. So I feel like all along the way there was, and each one has been successfully better for me, I feel like also. But I mean, along the way, each and every point, there's been little things that I've learned. And so I can't pinpoint an exact moment or an exact lesson necessarily, but I just feel like it's just the information that was provided to me as a male in the process, and my ability to say, hey, this is what she wants. This is what she needs. This is where I feel, as her husband, the person that knows her better than all of y'all do, because I live with her every day, having that information and the ability to bring it to them in a manner that they would understand as a medical professional. Right. And my journey has been more along the lines of medical professionals aren't as required as we would assume, right? And they're not needed to step in as quickly and as much as we would think they are. And so that learning for me was far more important, the more natural way, if you will, of approaching childbirth, not as a disease, but as a normal bodily function. That was where I feel like I gained a lot more understanding. And with that, the power to say, hey, we're not crazy. We're not weird. This is normal, y'all. We're okay.
That was a of progression for you from multiple births, because I would have had a home birth, Hazel, but he would not. So, which was why we were still in the hospital. So that was a growth for you over multiple births.
Yeah.
Right. I think I remember that. I remember maybe first meeting and you saying, this is what I would do. Dallas is just not on board. And I think I hear that a lot, like dads are like, I just want the person who I love the most, carrying the person that I love the most to survive. And if we're not conditioned or raised or have the experience of seeing that in a different context, then we're just going to default to what we know. And I feel like too, culturally, we live in the South, and I feel like dads are still, or partners are still kind of on the outside of what is happening. Now, generationally, I think we're getting a little bit better, but still we were not, raised to kind of be in it with the person that we were, that we're married to, or we have the partnership with. So, I remember me and Dallas worked a lot on how, I wasn't trying to convince y'all of anything. It was more getting y'all on the same page on the comfort of what birth looked like and what the normal parts of birth was, because you experienced, going in or falling into the system of the medical model, realizing that, whoa, this was what we asked for, but this was not necessarily what aligned with us. And it was more just about getting comfortable with the process. And then the communication process of, if I don't like something, I have to ask these questions this way, without thinking that they just want to control or do what they want, or not have that perception of doctors or midwives just want to tell us what to do. It might come across that way, but that's not how. It's just the communication part of that. So after Hazel, you find yourself pregnant again, and so tell me that process.
Oh, I was terrified because it was COVID, and I didn't want Dallas to where we were. Hospital rules were very strict. And so if he had left the hospital in the middle of labor, say one of our kids needed something, he might not have been let back in. And so I remember calling you and just sobbing, saying, I am pregnant.
What am I going to do?
I was like, I don't know what to do. And you just talked me through it. And I talked to Dallas, and you kind of talked to Dallas, and he had more information at that time. And so we're like, we're going to have a home birth, just because we felt that was, and I don't know if it was COVID pushing you into, it probably was a little bit, but
there was nothing that was going to stop me from being with my wife and child.
Right.
No hospital policy, no doctor, no nurse, no security guard.
Right.
Nobody was going to stop me from that.
Right.
And the only path forward, I felt like, would be to have a home birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a very rewarding experience.
The COVID policies, I think all over, everywhere, but especially in the US, and then especially where we are in Alabama, was very jarring for a lot of people and very unfair. And of course, to be fair, the system had never gone through a pandemic before. They only knew what they knew how to do. And of course, as birth workers on the outside, were trying to, do the things, the human rights things. Everybody deserves to have somebody with them, for labor. There were people that were laboring by themselves, and which totally blew my mind and rocked my world. It was just kind of a would you rather game. And I remember, I remember you being upset, knowing that this is not going to be a good show. I don't know how Dallas feels about it. But then after we kind of risk assessed on how do y'all feel about this? And I do feel like you, Dallas, came to a place that was like, there's nothing that's going to keep me away from her in labor. And then y'all just kind of really having a quote unquote come to Jesus meeting about what that looked like, for your family. But then that meant us working together to find a provider that you were comfortable with again.
Yes.
So then what happened? Who did you end up with that time?
Rebecca Myrick. She's amazing. She, I guess, really set me up for a comfortable birth, because she's so calm, the whole time. So I loved her, and that birthing experience was very peaceful. And bless her heart. She lives about an hour away from me, I guess, or something, maybe a little bit longer. And I was so calm during that birth. The night of, I didn't know I was as far along as I did. And she almost missed it, but she did a great job of just coming in and staying calm. And no, I loved her.
So tell me, like, give me some specifics of how you felt between your home birth laboring experience and your hospital laboring experiences.
I figured out that I'm a very in my bubble person when I labor, which what the hospital didn't give me was a quiet place to not be bothered, calm, dark. And it makes my labors go so much quicker, like smoother, quicker. I would almost say, and I know a lot of people don't agree with hearing this, but I almost say pain-free. It's just hard work. So I just felt more at peace, more calm, more assured of what I was doing. I remember in the hospital thinking I need an epidural because this is so hard. And I'm a natural laborer. I never thought that at home. Not once. Like I was in my jam. Like at one point I used a birthing pool. And so you guys figured out, or you figured out when you got there, that I was much further along than I thought I was. And you were like, Dallas, you need to go fill up that pool for. And so I got in there and I just relaxed and it felt so good. And I remember Gideon was coming out like Superman with his arm out first. And I wasn't even aware like that something was going on. Like I was just in my zone. I never felt concerned about that. You and Rebecca knew how to move me around a little bit to get him to come out. And I never was even aware till afterwards that there was like a little bit of a concern there for a second. But anyway, it was so much better. Like I would 100%. I mean, I can't just recommend this to anybody because I don't know their health or, things, but I always say that was my favorite birth. It was like the dream birth. And if I could do that birth every time, I would probably have 20 kids, but I can't because the next one was not the same. But if I could do that again, I would have a bunch of kids.
I love that. But your experiences where with your other labors, especially your hospital ones, your labors were long, and maybe that was position, maybe that was just first birth. I feel like Hazel's was not that. I don't feel like Hazel's was that long. I'm not the one giving, in labor. But
we were only in the hospital 4 hours with Hazel.
Yeah,
before she
I don't feel like that one was that long. And so the transition from maybe more education, reducing fear, you had a partner that he was finding his voice, and all of that kind of changed when y'all really had to dig in and really find that strength to do something that your belief system and your soul really wanted to do, but your heads had to kind of catch up to that. Yeah. Because when our partners are not comfortable with something, we're not comfortable with something. There is so many home birth journeys or hospital to home birth journeys that I feel like people it's easy for them. It's like, oh yeah, I would never go back to the hospital for a certain reason. But then there's some of these transitions that are gradual for different reasons that you still have to, if we had not been a pandemic, then what would have happened? There's things that come into our lives that make us dig deeper. And like, who are we in these moments? And yes, Rebecca was there. Yes, I was there. We didn't do a whole lot to be like, you birthed that baby. Yes, I came in. You were definitely, I feel like further than because you were laboring very quietly and brilliantly and beautifully. And sometimes we don't know where somebody is, but when I'm talking to you and you're not answering me. Yeah, because when I come in and I check on a mom, I'm watching and I'm not just swooping in, and I'm like, in between contractions, and I really couldn't even tell when you were sort of in between contractions sometimes. How is everything? How are you doing? And when you were not responding well, like, I was like, yeah, she's way further than I think. Hey, Dallas, fill up the pool if she wants to have a water birth. Where's Rebecca? My next question was ETA of your midwife.
She was there 22 minutes, I think, before Gideon came out.
Yeah, because I ended up calling her and saying,
speed it up.
I can do this, but I would really like for you to be here.
I don't want to sign off on those papers.
I'm not that doula, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, we love you. I love you.
Yeah.
But I'm not that doula. So I want people to understand that home birth is a prep work just like a hospital birth. And you have to be, you have to be okay with what's getting ready to happen. But y'all are the ones that put the effort in and dug deep and changed the course of your lives to be totally honest with that. Dallas, how do you feel about the hospital births versus Gideon's birth and you coming out on the other side? How do you feel about that?
It was great for me. I had my
slept all the time.
workload was significantly reduced just because of the way that India labors. Or through that, she had planned and prepared for this, and like you said, at any birth you need to be preparing for that. I think it would be foolhardy or a fool's errand to not prepare. But I think that because India prepared so well and Rebecca and you had coached us through so much, I just felt better prepared for the whole home birth situation. And I felt like it was really up to her more than me in that situation. I was like, do I need to call Rebecca? No, don't. I don't think so. I don't think so. So communication is key, I guess.
I slept so much, but
it was great. I woke up, needed to fill the bathtub up, and was ready to go,
Yeah.
Birthing tub.
Again, that's just how I labor. I go into my own bubble. You only have to touch me.
So as far as birth teams go, what would you tell other people that were looking for a really good birth team? What would that look like to you?
A doula. No, you just need somebody who, I agree. I think everybody should have a doula. I really do. But you just have to know your team and know that they're who you want in your corner. Know your values, your belief system, and make sure that you have people there who are going to honor that. Because just because you walk into an OB office and say, this is what I want, doesn't mean that you're going to get those things. You have to really make sure that you have somebody in your corner who is going to honor your belief system.
I would recommend that you and your partner communicate really, really well. And a doula, and not to be a kiss up or whatever, but I feel like a doula who is very familiar with the process can say, okay, y'all, have y'all thought about, this may come up, because I don't know. I'm
Right.
not a female. I don't know this process very well. I wasn't raised on a farm or anything like that. So it was very foreign to me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So having that person there to say, hey, have y'all discussed, are you planned for that? That's key in the whole process. So knowledge and having someone there that can assist you with that is a huge benefit.
So what are the specific needs that a doula met for you? And yes, I was your doula. I don't want to be an infomercial for myself. I really want this to be information for anybody that listens to this. What did a doula do for you? I feel like needs are very, very different. So if, somebody said, well, why did you use a doula? What specifically happened?
For me, I had backup.
Mm-hmm.
So if my hands got tired, if I didn't know what to do next, I had backup, somebody that I could talk to, that I could reason with, that doesn't necessarily have a dog in a medical arena fight per se. I had somebody there that I could communicate with that would give me the information I needed. Hey, have you tried this? Have you used Rebozo? Have you done whatever these items might be, or these mechanisms might be? Ask her, communicate with her. Maybe it's time to ask her this. Maybe it's time to do that. It's always good to have that second set of eyes, second set of hands to do that. And I just felt like you delivered that very, very well.
How about you, India? I mean, now I know I do my job well, but sometimes we do it better when we're teachable. And I know I haven't always gotten it right. And I know not all doulas are going to get it right. So India, if you were in a mommy group somewhere and said, everybody needs a doula, what does that mean to you?
You gave us so much information. I've been on the natural home birth board from the beginning. I would have done that, Joanna, if we hadn't had, preeclampsia and anyway. But I didn't have the information. I didn't have the statistics. I don't understand hospital policies. And so I didn't have what I needed to give to him and be like, this is why I want to do this. This is why I feel this way. I didn't have any of that. And so you gave me all that. And that was one of the biggest blessings that I was given, because without that, I wouldn't have had my home birth. And I look back on that, and it was the greatest blessing that I have right now. It gets me through thinking about our youngest birth, who didn't quite turn out like that. And it's just a joy to look back at that time and that birth and to have been given that blessing. And so that was what I would say is my biggest. And then after that, I am a quiet birther in my bubble, and he needed somebody. He didn't know what to do. He felt lost, and and I say that I needed somebody too, but you being there for him, guiding him, those are the two biggest takeaways that I get from that. And I'm so grateful.
Doulas really do a lot for dads, and that I don't
Yeah.
think people recognize. And because dads sometimes get lost in the shuffle, and they're like, no, y'all just go do your thing. I'm like, nope.
Yes.
You did
Right.
this. You did this.
Exactly.
So you have a dog in the fight too. So let's talk about Lily's. So you got pregnant again, and you're like, hey, we would love to have you. And I was like, oh, well, I'm a part of the family. So thank you for asking me again. So take us on that pregnancy journey, first of all.
How much time do you have?
We're just now getting to a point where I feel like we can talk about this one right now. So if I cry about it, maybe not as right as I thought I was, but
Okay.
Her birth, her beginning stages of pregnancy, it felt like I was super healthy. It felt like the healthiest pregnancy that I'd had, or so I thought. I felt really good, and I felt we had a midwife set up. We were going to have a home birth again, and we were getting really close to the end. And we had a few traumatic experiences along the way. I had a friend who died in childbirth, and so there were a lot of things that popped up that were emotional during the end too. But I started getting these massive migraines. But every time the midwife would come and take my blood pressure, it would just be a little bit elevated, but not bad, not out of my normal for late pregnancy. But it just got to where I started feeling like I was going out of my head, and I was going crazy. And I was like, something is wrong. I couldn't listen to people. I couldn't function. And so I finally got a hold of my regular doctor, and I was like, I think I need to go have this looked at. And he was like, go to the hospital. And we went to a local hospital, and my blood pressure was doing the same thing. It wasn't like extremely high. It was elevated a little bit occasionally, or it would be really high for like a second, and then it would come back down. And they told us, well, I don't think it's preeclampsia. If you want to, you can go back and check in again in the emergency room, because we were at a little place for pregnant people where they go before they go back to
triage.
Yeah, that's where we were. And so I went down. I was thinking about going to the emergency room. Well, they told me he couldn't come back there because they were too full, so I couldn't have any visitors back there with me. And I was already feeling crazy, like out of my head, insane. Like something was in my head. I felt like I just didn't feel good. And so we were like, well, we just need to leave then. And so we left. I go back home, and we're getting the kids down for go to bed. And I tell Dallas, something is not right. I don't feel good. I just feel insane. I need to go back to a hospital, but we're going back to a different one. And so we go back to a different one, and they did all the preeclampsia tests, and it came back positive for preeclampsia, and it had inflamed my brain. Like it was pretty rough, and I was feeling really rough. So they immediately put me on magnesium IVs, and they put me on some other medication. Well, we were inducing, because I still, I'm a creature of habit. I still want to have a natural birth.
Right.
And I started feeling better with some of the magnesium they were giving me, although I felt like I had the flu. But I didn't feel as insane, like going out of my head, like something was seriously wrong. And so I got that, and we just started inducing labor, which is something I'd been through with my first with preeclampsia. So we had preeclampsia with my first, and now my last. And it's just, I hated it. My first was really rough with Pitocin, and so there was a lot of emotion involved in her birth, because it was just a place I didn't want to be again. And I knew I needed to be there, and we didn't really have any options. It was not somewhere I wanted to be.
Right.
Anyway, and I don't really remember a lot of her birth. Like, it's almost like my brain just shut down. And so you and Dallas probably remember more of her birth than I actually do. But I remember her coming, and then I remember just blacking out after that. And they had me on multiple IVs in a different room, more magnesium drips, and I just kept like passing out. And so I don't have a lot of memories of the days right after her birth, but you probably do.
Dallas, how did you feel during all that time when she started having the headaches? And I remember the first time you took her to the emergency room and y'all left because you're like, I don't know where to go from here because we're just sitting here and we're not getting any answers. And then you took her back a second time, didn't you? Like, didn't y'all go somewhere else? I feel like before to get some more answers. So kind of tell me that from a husband side of advocacy and just advocating.
It was difficult because now we're going back into a system we know is not right for us. And they want to know about previous pregnancies. And we have to tell them that we had a home birth. And you could tell immediately at every single hospital we went to, oh, they're those type of people. Mm. That was how we were treated the whole time. So it made it a lot more difficult for me because India is not in the fight. She is fighting her own battle. She's in her individual bubble. She has to be. She can't be there. Now it's my turn. So it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And the woman that I love is dying and nobody would listen. Nobody cared. And they didn't, we're just those weird people that have these weird views that are not really aligned with science and they don't really know what they're talking about. So it was an uphill battle the entire time. Mm. And I think I cried on you several times, Traci. I apologize. But
no way.
we had, it was hard. It was very, very, very hard. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. And I've had some pretty bad ones, but it was one of the worst experiences of my life because, we did the whole hospital birth. The baby was there. We were kind of not really kicked out. That's not fair to say that to a hospital. We were good in their estimation. You're good enough. You should go home now. Mm-hmm. There's not really a reason for you to be here, but she was not good. So we went back to the hospital. We stayed for 3 weeks or 2 weeks.
It was like a week and a half.
Forever, felt like.
It was a week and a half.
5 days, 5 minutes in a hospital is like 3 hours outside. Anyways, it's like being in prison just does something to you. Anyways, it was just a horrible experience. We had maybe 3 nurses that actually cared. And I know I could show you who they were. They were phenomenal. They were there. They helped us, but nobody else cared. I have friends that were doctors that they wouldn't even return my phone calls. We felt very abandoned.
And those nurses that we valued while we were there, they actually tried to push for things for us to happen in there, and they didn't end up happening. And then when we went back, they were like, oh yeah, we probably should have done that in the first place. And so it was just an awful, awful experience. And I didn't even get the help I needed. We left the hospital and I went back to my doctor, my regular doctor, and he kind of just figured things out. And I went through months of treatments because, and we're we went through and did IV treatments and a bunch of other stuff to get me to where I needed to be. So the recovery process was a lot longer than that week and a half in the hospital, but we didn't feel like we got the care we needed until we left. He even had to change my medications because they weren't right. They still weren't right.
Our family doctor had to do that, not from what the hospital had sent us home.
Anyway.
Wow. That's a lot of weeds and a lot of fighting and and you're not in India, you're not feeling good. And you have other kids at home that needed to be taken care of. And
there were lots of tears.
Well, and knowing you like I do, knowing y'all both like I do, you were sad because you were not able to mommy.
Oh yeah. Lily became Dallas's baby. And I love that and I hate that at the same time. But he really took care of her because I could barely hold my arms up. And so he changed a lot of diapers. And for the first several months, her first year, really, she valued Dallas more than she valued me, I feel like. But year 2, this year, she's a mama's girl now, so I feel like I'm claiming some of that back. She loves me so much this year. But that first year.
So now I'm mad.
You did
I
so much
lost
work.
my best friend,
But it's that she's almost 2. She'll be 2 in November. So it's just that 2-year stage where she's mama's girl now. But anyway, so yeah.
She still waits for me at the door, though.
She does.
So
She still loves him.
Aw.
She's not abandoned to me, okay?
She still is a mama's girl as of this year. Last year, though, she was all about Papa because that's who took care of her. Anyway, and the other kids. I love and appreciate our mothers so much because they really took up a lot of the slack for us during those difficult times, and they took me to all of my treatments. And anyway, we had a village that really helped us and took care of us.
That's lovely, because I think there's so many people who go through, so many crises that don't have their families. And I'm so thankful for, for both of your tribe. I feel like y'all have a pretty big tribe. And
Traci, you were integral in that as well. I mean, you got us in touch with another midwife that also, because we had already paid for Rebecca to be there, but she can't, just because of the laws and the situation that we're in, she can no longer do that. And so you got us in touch with someone else that has now become she was a friend of mine before, ironically. And now, I mean, she's just been there and she's helped us with other stuff since then.
Oh, yeah. She's been a vital part of our healing, too.
And so we owe a lot to you as well. But there was just like you said, it took a lot.
Well, I just, appreciate just your strength and just digging in and just figuring things out and having to, and not really rolling over, because, when things come at us like over and over and over, right? And you're like, okay, I'm at the top of this mountain. I've had this wonderful home birth, and okay, well, every other birth is going to, seemingly be the same, and things come in our lives that just slap us in the face. But when we go and we find our power in the process, and I'm going to ask you what that power was. What was your ultimate power to get you through some of this stuff?
I don't know.
Well, we will say ultimately God and our faith. Do you know how many prayers that I prayed in that bed in the hospital? At my worst, I was praying for, relief, even if that meant, that was it for me. But we prayed so much in that room, and we had people all around, our family, our friends, all praying for us. And so that would be our biggest, that was our why. That was what kept us going.
I remember coming in and seeing you after Lily was born, and she was doing her car seat test, and I was holding your hand, and you just did not feel good. And you were like, I just don't feel good, Traci. I just don't feel good. And, I just appreciate how you were still there, and you were still fighting, and you were still like, I'm going to figure this out, or we're just going to figure this out, one day at a time. And your stories can just help other people. And, God is just so good, and everybody's belief system is different. We're leaving room for that. But, the power in prayer and relying on scripture too, it's, God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I'm very thankful that you're where you are today. And you might still be walking this really crazy health road, right? But, thinking back, looking at everything, India, if you ran across a family that was, in the middle of something kind of like this, what would be the very first thing that you would encourage them?
Ooh, that gets my heart. And I would just probably stop right there and ask if I could pray for them, if that was something they would be willing to do. But don't quit. Reach
out to people and look for a support system.
Don't do it alone.
Yeah, you don't have to do it alone. And the harder you work at it, the more answers you'll get.
Oh,
and
you have to
and
fight
so you just have to continue to fight. And if you're going through it and that's your significant other that's there, you stay by their side, and you'll get through it together. And It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun, but you can do it. You can do it. And that's, like I said before, knowledge is power. The more you know, I mean, I stayed on my phone trying to find answers. People were around me. You, Traci, especially, were there. Maybe look at this, maybe explore this avenue. So just finding that person, whether that's a Traci, whether that's a whatever that is, just look for that, whether that's your phone, whatever, finding that person that you can kind of try to work things out, you know.
Nice. Thank y'all for spending time with me again. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank
you.
Bye. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you follow me on TikTok at Traci Doula 4 or Instagram at Traci Doula, you know how I like to dig into the deep conversations. If you don't follow me on those places, you should, as well as this podcast. As we lean into honest conversations, especially the hard ones, remember that your journey has power and your healing lights the way for others. The work you're doing ripples further than you know. If you'd like to work with me, whether it's coaching or childbirth classes or workshops if you're a professional or mentoring, or maybe even speaking at an event, visit tracidoula.com. And if today's conversation spoke to you, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Reach out anytime through email at hello@tracidoula.com and feel free to leave a comment. Until next time, move forward with intention and keep your power in the process.